Ma'am Veena Radhi. Before I talk about her, I would like Shruti Srivatsa to mention the rules here. Then I shall continue with it.
A
Is it
very good
okay?
evening. Yes, ma'am. A very good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining today's class. My name is Suti Srivastav. I'm a fourth year law student at NLU Punjab. And the rules for today's session are I request everybody to keep their mics on mute so that there is no disturbance during the class. If there are any questions or queries, please put them in the chat box. I will take note of them and they will be discussed after ma'am is done with her lecture. Thank you. Revati ma'am, you can please take over from here.
Thank you, Shruti. Yeah. Our eminent speaker, Ma'am Veena Rali, has very rich experience in both as a practicing advocate as well as a mediator. She had her basic training in India and advanced training in, she had advanced training abroad at S.J. Quincy College of Law, University of Utah, USA, and at Storrs Institute of Dispute Resolution, University of Pepperdine, USA. She has been accredited as mediator with CIR London and CIMI at Singapore. So with this rich experience, she's been the mediator in, she got her training, and she's been, due to her immense experience and made us touch with the people of all ages, she has become a legendary in Delhi High Court Mediation and Conciliation Center, which is otherwise called Samadhan, which was established in the year 2006. And she is a leading mediator, and she has been appointed as mediator in several important and large commercial and family disputes by Supreme Court and Delhi High Court. With her rich experience, today she will talk about mediated agreements, how it has to be, when you complete a mediation, how you have to enter into an agreement, and what are the importance of mediated agreement. She will take you through all this. Ma'am, the floor is yours. I will not take much time.
Thank you, Revati, for speaking so high about me. I am one amongst you as a learner. I must appreciate the endeavor made by all of you under the leadership of Pushp and Thankajanji, bringing EMW series continuously with a lot of commitment on specific days, dates, and times, which is really rare, and which is not only you can say a product of Pan India, rather she has gone across our boundaries and has touched global boundaries all over the world. It's really a matter of proud for me also being a part of one amongst you, I can say. And today you, Bush, giving me an opportunity to speak on mediation agreement. I know I can share my knowledge with you, but I must tell you that I will be sharing my knowledge, which I gained by learning from my gurus, and then in the process, my learning of mediation by teaching. So it's all a experiential based, you can say, my speaking today. I'm not going to be talking about any theory, because mediation agreement does not talk about any theory. But yes, all those who are going to be lawyers very soon, particularly all the students, uh, and under the moderator leader Stuti Srivastava, uh, this part we otherwise know, because we talk about contract. We learn the contract. Of course, contract, and there is a lot of difference in contract and the mediation agreement. But we know some basic norms when parties agree to certain things. So today, we will just try to learn mediation agreement. You have already gone through 6 classes before this. You have already learned about conflict, and resolution of conflict is managed by a trained mediator through the process of mediation by using his negotiation skills and communication techniques. When after marathon sessions of mediation, the parties resolve their disputes, their conflicts, what is important at that point of time is to pen down what the parties are agreeing. Last time, Sushila ma'am talked about impasse. That impasse is the stage which starts from the beginning itself and is majorly experienced and seen by me, and like me, even Pushp and many more mediators who are here, even at the time of writing of settlement. So that stage is not gone. So last time also she had told us that impasse can arise at any point of time, starting from the beginning of the mediation process till the last signatures are put on the written agreement between the parties. So when this stage comes, we generally feel very elated. Oh, parties have resolved their disputes. Oh, I have managed to bring them to that resolution. But our job is not over. Our job starts now in a different way. So I'll just share my knowledge, which I have gained in the last 15 years from this process of doing mediation, and now sharing my knowledge by teaching a little bit. So it is just my endeavor. I'll share now my PPT also on this, specifically prepared for students to make you understand in very simple language what mediation agreement is. Why don't we call it a contract? Because generally people, when agree to certain things, it should be a contract, because we have seen people agree, it is contract, they sign it. But this is not so. It's a very specific, very special, very delicate, very sensitive document, because it has gone through various stages, starting from conflict to resolution. And in all this process, from conflict to resolution, is the result of building of relationships or stopping further damage to the relationship. So this is not that standard contract, it is something different. So let me just share something with you. So we'll talk about mediation agreement. People join their hands at the end and mediator gets very excited. I have brought the parties to resolution. But in this whole process of learning of mediation, you must have understood the role of the parties in that. So this mediation agreement is the written product of an interaction between the parties. It's not between the lawyer or the mediator. It is something between the parties who willingly come together to resolve their disputes, facilitated by a third neutral person. And who is the third neutral person? Mediator. And what does he do? He is using all those negotiation skills and communication techniques, which you have learned already in the previous classes. So this is not a normal contract, a dry document where A is writing something and B is saying, okay, I agree to do this. So this is a long process of interaction between the parties. Willingness of the parties, that voluntariness has not been taken away. Voluntariness is there. So willingly coming together to resolve their disputes. And of course, the third party has a very important role to play in this. We have also understood these things in the, particularly in the topic of negotiation, that why do we negotiate? We negotiate to achieve our goal. And what is that goal? That goal is to have an agreement which is wise, which is efficient, and which builds relationships. What is wise? Does it look after both sides' interest as much as it is possible? If any agreement takes care of interest of both sides, you can call it a wise document, a wise agreement. Another element of this is just test it. Does it create a fair resolution of parties' conflict? If yes, it's a wise agreement. So a wise agreement can be defined as one that meets the legitimate interest of each side. If there are more than two sides, then each side, to the extent possible, and resolves conflict fairly and take interest into account, common interest into account. So document the settlement agreement has to be wise. Now, another aspect is efficient. Maybe certain people take it to use it interchangeably between wise and efficient. But I would like to explain it. Efficiency is the capability of being in existence. I'm efficient to do this part. And efficiency of the document is legitimacy of the document. Legitimacy of the terms of the agreement between the parties. If parties agree to something which is not legally possible, even if you write that settlement agreement, it will have no consequences. It will have no results. Parties will be somewhere or the other, you will find them struggling in some court premises tomorrow again, if the document is not legally implementable. And the third and the very important aspect is builds a relationship. When we write in contract, we don't look at the relationship between the parties. Rather, sometimes relationship is just created by that document. Whereas in this, it builds up relationship because conflict has somehow adversely affected the relationship between the parties. And now parties are building up that relationship. So the document must be written, the settlement must be written in a way where it builds relationship. It does not talk about past allegations in such a way that people are not in a position to move out of that past and that relationship still remains damaged. And sometimes maybe the parties are so much engrossed in their conflict that they do not want to build relationship, but the document should be written in such a way, the settlement should be written in such a way that it stops further damage to the relationship. So the wording, the language has to be very specific to the mediation settlement. That is why we write the word when we conclude our marathon sessions of mediation. We do not say the parties have compromised. We say the parties have settled, the parties have resolved. Because in compromise, you must have, if you recollect correctly, compromise, you give some, the other person also gives some. Compromise means karna padta hai, not ki hota hai. When you want to settle things, everything is set at rest. That is called settlement. So there is a specific reason using the word settlement instead of contract or compromise deed. Also not to be used, keeping in mind there also you do not get the level of satisfaction which you get in settlements by the process of mediation. So there are specific things which you must keep in mind while you are drafting a settlement agreement at the end of resolution of all the issues between the parties. I would like to explain this whole thing in this way also, that when you write something, you people are students and some of my friends are there as lawyers and mediators. In our drafting, we are supposed to be very specific when we write something. The message must go to the judge. If we are writing as a lawyer, the judge must understand what I want. And sometimes pleadings are not clear. The judge also doesn't give us the relief. Similar is the position when we are writing settlements. We must keep some components in our mind, and I have tried to put them in 5 C's. And I would like my student friends to put another C's to that, because there can be more C's. This is not only an exhaustive list, it is only a limited list, which by my capabilities I have been able to put. The first and the foremost I will say is clear. The settlement agreement should be clear. What do you mean by clear? If I tell you in Hindi, clear means spasht, easy to be perceived, easy to be understood, and easy to be interpreted by the parties. So the settlement agreement should be clear. Now, second C says it should be concise. And what does it mean? In Hindi, it says sankshipt. So it should be spasht, it should be sankshipt. And what do we understand from this concise? Giving a lot of information, but in few words and briefly. You can't write history, you can't write long stories. In writing long stories, sometimes you lose contents which are very important to the settlement agreements. So be very brief, but it should be descriptive in such a way that whosoever reads it must be in a position to understand where from the parties are coming and where they are going to conclude their conflicts. So very important part is concise. Now the third one is complete. In Hindi, I will say means पूर्ण, संपूर्ण, पूरा होना चाहिए document अपने आप में. Halfway, if you are not putting in writing all the terms which the parties agree, the document will be called incomplete, and you will be finding parties struggling to find out the clear meaning of the document, and maybe again somewhere in the lobby of the courtrooms. So it should be complete. What do you mean by complete? Having all the necessary or appropriate information. Maybe it has to be a wholesome document in itself. It should be written in such a way that every step should be written, that step A will be followed by B, and B will be followed by C, C will be followed by D. So this should be a complete document, a purna document, a sampurna document. Now another C comes, composite. Maybe some definitions can be composite, comprehensive, can be interchanged or can be used in place of each other. But I would like to give a real meaning which we keep in mind while writing our settlements. And composite means sanyukt. And this composite word has been derived from composition. When we talk about musical compositions, जब हम गाने की बात करते हैं, and when we write, it's a wonderful composition. The expression which comes in your mind, the expression which comes on your face, it reflects what you are listening to. So the composition of the document should be rhythmic. It should be sanyukt. It should give you all the details. That is, all complicated and related parts must be forming a part of the settlement agreement. Maybe different things are there, different substances are there, different terms are there, but they should be, you can say, stitched in such a way that ultimately when you read the document, sometimes people appreciate the documents and the settlements written by some of the mediators because they become very rhythmic. Step by step, every aspect is taken care of by the mediator while helping the parties to write down the settlement agreement. In my list, as I said, it is not an exhaustive list. In my list, the last C is comprehensive. And comprehensive means vyapak, detailed, extensive, including and dealing with all or nearly all elements or aspects of something which is being talked in that settlement agreement. It should be thorough, it should be extensive. And when you read it, you must see that there is not even a single aspect which has not been visualized by the parties while helping the mediator to draft that settlement. So it should be spasht, it should be sankshipt, it should be spoon, sanyukt, and vyapak. And that document definitely is going to satisfy all the concerns of the parties. So why parties are with you at this stage when mediation has otherwise ended, and the last leg of the mediation process is to put every settlement term in a document so that parties feel satisfied and they go back happily. Let us understand what is mediation agreement. As I said in the beginning, mediation agreement is different from a standardized contract. That's a dry document. It doesn't talk about anything. It doesn't talk about their relationships. It doesn't talk about where from the one party is coming and where from the other party is coming. They just say A agrees to B, and in case of non-compliances, this should happen, or they should have a joint venture doing steps A, B, C, D. So this is not that standardized contract. There is element of some emotions in the document because the mediation process encourages parties to air their emotions in that mediation room. And emotions have a value. That emotions are dealt with by the mediator. They are not spelled in the mediation settlement agreement, but they reflect something or the other in the settlement agreement. That is the only area where parties really feel happy and satisfied. Yes, everything has been taken care of while drafting the settlement agreement. And as we have already understood in the beginning itself, in class 1 or 2, when you talk about the conflict, that conflict is between parties. So whom does this settlement belongs? It belongs to the parties. They have to live with the document. You may be out of the process after getting signatures of the parties, but parties will be living their rest of the life with the help of that particular settlement, maybe in respect of 1 or 2 or 3 aspects of their lives. So it must reflect the joint efforts of the parties. Though mediators helps in writing everything, rather sometimes some of the mediators, I will not say all, some of the mediators even draft for the parties, but it must reflect the joint efforts of the parties, because who are the creators of this document? Who are the creators of the settlement agreement? It is created by parties. And whom does it belong? It belongs to the parties. And what does it point out? It identifies the pivotal terms of the parties, not of the lawyers involved or supporting the parties, not of the mediators. What is important to the parties, that is what is identified in that settlement agreement. That is what is contained in that settlement agreement. And it protects the interest of the parties, not of anybody else. And it rebuilds communication between the parties. So very important is that the document belongs to the parties. They have to live with that document. And so it must be drafted in such a way that it conveys something rhythmic, and composition of the settlement should be enjoyed by all. That is how the mediation agreement is perceived and is considered different from the standardized contract. I have tried to give 7 dimensions while writing mediation agreement. In my career as mediator, in my professional life as mediator for the last 15 years, I have seen and I have experienced whenever there is a settlement taking place, mediator also get very excited, apart from the parties, because parties, those who have been living in that conflict, because of which they were sitting against each other instead of sitting side by side. And when they find that the other party is meeting the points of view of party A with party B, they feel very happy and excited. So is the experience with the mediator also. And we overlook certain things in that excitement. And we generally keep in mind, if we do not get the signatures on this document today, the parties will run away. That feeling may be right, but only a short-lived feeling. Because what we understood in the previous slide was that this settlement agreement belongs to the parties. It is made for the parties. It is created by the parties. So we should stitch it in such a way that the parties are in a position to use this for the rest of their lives. And they are not seen struggling anywhere in the court premises or in the offices of the lawyers to understand the meaning of any clause which is written in the settlement agreement. So 7 steps should be kept in mind while you have, the moment you have crossed that stage where parties have agreed in you can say in principle, and they want to pen down that settlement agreement, keep these 7 stages in your mind. The first stage is identifying and naming the parties. Then comes the framework of the agreement. Then comes identify their interest through the terms of the agreement. Of course, mentioning of terms is incomplete if we do not write about implementation of the terms. Do not be in a haste. Draft a settlement, revise it, read it, and then only once everybody gives their consent, get the ceremonial signature. At that point of time, we generally congratulate the parties. So that is why I have used the word ceremonial signatures on the settlement agreement. Let us go one by one with each and every stage of writing of settlement. The first stage was identifying and naming the parties. You must have seen in your normal, I think, studies curriculum also, When there are two individuals, we write the name of the individual and we identify that person, son of such and such, like Mr. Sohan, son of Mr. Ramdas, resident of, we give the place, details of the complete residential address of the person. So in family conflicts, partnership dissolutions, conflict between neighbors, and such like conflicts where two individuals can be identified independent of any other organization, they are identified by their names. The parties represent themselves and they are identified as such by their own names. So we put their names as party A and as party B, or maybe party C and party D. It may be if there are more than two parties. But there is a very big caveat when we are dealing with organizations and companies. It is important to clarify the authority of the person participating in the process of mediation. Who will be signing the settlement agreement must be clear to you in the beginning itself, because the person who has come before you for the purposes of negotiation, maybe he is just a negotiator and he has no final authority to sign the decisions. And at that point of time, when you start struggling and you start looking at the person who will sign, and does that person have, in case of companies, does that person have any board resolution, you will be stuck at that point of time. So it is very important to understand this part, particularly in the beginning itself, when you start the process. When you find any company's name, any organization name, are you an authorized representative? Do you hold any authority in your name? Do you hold any board resolution in your name? The person may say yes. And in case the person doesn't say yes, then at least you can tell them who has to sign the settlement agreement should have the board resolution or the authority to sign that document in his hand when that stage comes, so that there is no further delay for getting those resolutions, or even sometimes even clarification. Sometimes people say, okay, we'll go back and we'll ask our organization who has to sign it. Then the whole purpose will be defeated. So it's very important to understand the authority who is sitting before you for the purposes of negotiation, whether that same person can sign the settlement agreement or not. It's important for the purposes of getting the person, because settlement means commitment to the terms of the settlement. So it is important that whosoever is signing that document, he is committed to the terms of the settlement agreement. The third stage comes. Framework of the agreement. Recital. Second part is terms. And that terms, as I said, fourth stage, identification and implementation of the terms. And then last stage comes that ceremonial signatures, affixation of the signatures. Without signatures, document is incomplete. Sometimes I have experienced that parties are there, document has yet to be finalized, they agree to everything and they say, tomorrow I will come and sign it. And some people have not come, they have not put their signatures. You cannot take it a final document at all. So signatures have a very important role to play. That is also a stage. And that is a stage where most of the mediators sitting here will agree with me that when they put their signatures, we congratulate them. They really enjoy that. Sometimes we have seen people in tears when they are putting their signatures. So this has a very important role to play, not only from legal point of view, even from emotional point of view. So what is recital? Let us just understand. Factual narration of facts, which generally begins with the word whereas. Whereas party A got married with party B on such and such date. Whereas the parties have been blessed with 2 children born on such and such dates. So this whole description, you can say the narrative means recital. It gives little reference to the disputes and differences between the parties. In commercial matters, how 2 persons came into contact with each other for the purposes of having a commercial transaction, and how the parties are before the mediation or before any court, there is a hierarchy of events. We must mention them without putting any blame game on any party, because blame game does not give that satisfaction of resolving the issues. But we must mention about certain disputes and differences having risen between the parties and the common interest of all the parties in resolving those conflicts, resolving those disputes. That is important because that shows that this is the product of a mediation process. A mediation process where parties sit across the table and resolve their conflicts. So it's important to mention that part also. That makes it distinct from a normal contract. It must also specify that it is a product of mediation. Because what is mediation? Here, that definition of mediation should weigh in your mind, where a third neutral person facilitates communication between the parties and helps them to resolve their conflict, their disputes by using negotiation and communication techniques. So it must reflect that it is a product of the parties, and their statement is there, yes, it is a product of the parties. And from where do you get all this information? In mediation, parties are not supposed to give you in writing the catharsis which has bothered them for so long. Whatever unfolds in that mediation process, you have to listen to that carefully. And those details develop from that catharsis only, from long stories of the parties. You have to gather all that information and put that in that concise way, in brief way, in the document, in the settlement agreement, without using any word which will be offended by either of the parties. Like you cannot say that party A manipulated the things in such a way that disputes and differences arose between the parties. You may simply say disputes and differences arose between the parties. So those blame games has to be kept aside. And thereafter, what is important, as I said, even as an ingredient of the mediation agreement under that head 5 C's, it should be short, crisp, but descriptive of the points of concurrence. What happened at what stage and how the parties have reached up to you, that should be given in a very short and crisp way without any blame game. And you will understand that when if party A, suppose there are two parties and you ask them to draft the document, they will keep their interest in such a way in the document that the other party is not going to accept it. That is why it is important, at least the beginning basic draft, sometimes it is drafted by mediators. And they then put it to both the side counsel and they say, okay, now you can give your suggestions. Because if one party is writing, definitely whatever allegations are in his mind against that party, they are going to be reflected in that document. So we should mention everything in a very short, but there should be a hierarchy of events. So whenever or whosoever reads the document, one should be very clear why and how at this stage the parties have reached for settlement, at the stage of settlement. Now the next stage was with regard to identification of the terms and implementation of the terms. These two stages are, you can say, they are dealt with in the document simultaneous to each other. So we have to point out the hierarchy of the terms between the parties. The contentious point should be mentioned first, that is to be kept in mind. Why is it so? Take an example of a matrimonial dispute. The marital discord is the most important aspect. But if you take up in your mind that payment should be made by husband to wife, and we somehow forget about the relationship between two of them, how are they going to look at this relationship? Are they going to stay together? Are they going to separate and seeking divorce by mutual consent? That is missing. That does not give a clear picture of the agreement between the parties. So the most contentious point should be mentioned first. And the ranking should be done keeping in mind what? What is perceived important by the parties? And what is important from the point of view of the logic, law, and sometimes even social norms. Like in matrimonial disputes only, if suppose wife is seeking divorce, but she is residing in the same property, it may not be according to the social norms, it may be something exceptional. But how you should point out something, first talk everything with regard to their marital discord, and now at this point of time, what type of arrangement are they going to have? So you can also give your inputs only limited to the logic, law, and social norms, but keeping in mind the priority of the parties. If there is no such thing which is coming on the way of putting the terms in from the party's point of view, then we should leave it. And for giving more clarity to all the points, all the terms between the parties, there is no harm, rather it is highly appreciated if you give subtitles and give even outlines. Since I am using matrimonial example in this, I will say we can just highlight divorce or marital discord, how the parties are going to take divorce, within how much of time first motion will be filed, how much time the parties will take in filing second motion, what will happen to the payments being made, what if the second party does not come. So all those things may come first. And in case where there are children, we can put custody related issues. We can highlight custody and visitation. So the moment somebody opens a document, it is very clear. Now this part relates only to divorce between the parties and deals with their relationship. Second part deals with the relationship of both the parents with their children, and how are they going to do the co-parenting. Are they going to have financial arrangements, visitations, travel plans? And then once you start writing point A based on that custody related matter, second will also strike you or even the parties. But if you intermingle all the points, sometimes you lose your sight while drafting those settlements. Even important aspects are sometimes left. And this helps. And third, maybe suppose there are properties. How will you deal with your properties? How will you deal with your bank accounts? How will you deal with your rest of the issues? Maybe you are having joint business even. Sometimes people are having joint business. Sometimes people are having joint properties. Maybe there is no contribution from the side of the wife, but her name is there, because people do this generally to save taxes. They try to take properties in the names of the wives. Now, under various laws, these things have to be dealt in a different way. But when you highlight, everything comes to your mind immediately. And when you put in such outlines, even lawyers or advisors also start looking at it from the different angles which they are supposed to look at. Maybe some law is important for this point. But if you just mix up every point up and down, you realize, where do I read? And you can miss on important points. So these two stages are merged into one, and it is important to draft first a settlement. Keeping in mind, as I said in the beginning, we get excited, we get very elated, and we say parties will run away from there. So let us draft, let us get their signatures today itself. No, a big no to that stage, because whom does the document belong? It belongs to the parties. Give them time to think about what they are going to agree. Because if I read my drafting of any petition, which I drafted 35 years ago, even I laugh at myself. And sometimes I feel surprised, oh, I have written this way. Because draft gives you a scope to read it again and again. It advances the process, inculcating receptivity towards a final settlement. When you prepare draft and you give them a draft, they start applying their mind. And it gives them a confidence that this is their own agreement. And it builds trust between the parties, because the draft has been shared with everyone. Once you prepare a draft, it is required to be shared with everyone, with the concerned parties. They start applying their mind. It is possible, it is not possible. Legally, practically, keeping in mind the resources also between the parties. So it builds trust between the parties. It builds trust even in the process. When we talk about voluntariness of the process, this should not go away at the last stage. Generally, we have seen that it goes away from the mind of the mediator as well as in the whole mediation room. Everybody forgets about the voluntariness at that point of time. No sufficient time is given to the parties to go through the terms of the settlement. It gives them an occasion to scrutinize the terms of the agreement themselves. It becomes a tool for development of a final agreement that will satisfy the parties the maximum. Because sometimes, why it is important to write draft? Sometimes parties agree for a particular term. But when they read all these things, they realize, no, I can't do it. I said so at the heck of the moment. I said so to get away from the problem, but no, I can't do it. So that you can say the brainstorming starts even at that point of time. Can I do this? Can I fulfill this? Because this type of settlement agreement has got some consequences also if they are not followed. So what should you do? You revise the draft. Draft agreement should be constantly revised until it is final. Like we revise our petitions, and sometimes we become so blank, we give it to our associates. You read it now. Why do we do that? So that no important point is left. So give it to the parties, let them revise, you revise. It conveys that mediation is not coercive, it is still voluntary even at this stage. It adds credibility to the process, and sometimes it unveils even parties' true intention. We have experienced, I think, even Pushp and many more mediators sitting here, they must have experienced that's when they are about to sign the document, they say, I can't do this. I said, but I can't do this. And at that point of time, it becomes very embarrassing for that party to say no. But maybe it is a genuine reason, there can be genuine reason for saying no to this, because in this process, he has realized that he cannot do it. But there are certain precautions also to be used while revising this document. It should not be used as a tweak to delay the process. I have not been able to show it to my father. I have not been able to discuss it with my lawyer. Give them a specific time so that the process moves on. The process is not delayed. And it should not pose a new problem leading to a change of mind also. So be fast in this. Fast only limited to the extent that the parties get reasonable time to think about that and commit to the terms of the agreement. Not that it leads to the change of mind, and it must advance the settlement and should not impede its process. So be very careful while you are revising the document with the parties. This revision is not only giving them the document, it includes reading them aloud. And this reading should generally be done within the mediation room, but in caucus. Okay, you have agreed to this? Because when you are drafting the document, when you are drafting that settlement agreement, people may come up with certain issues, certain concerns. And if they speak in front of the opposite side, the opposite side gets offended. So preferably we should do that in private sessions, and so that we ensure, have you understood this part? It helps the mediator to confirm from both the parties, yes, there is a meeting of minds. Once you are getting that meeting of minds of the parties, your duty is done. This is what is required. It is not being forced on the parties. They are consenting to it, and they are going to be happy with this because they voluntarily consented to the terms of the agreement. Revision should be basically done in such a way to understand the terms of the agreement. They are in agreement with the terms. This commitment should come from the parties. They acted voluntarily. They understand that the terms are binding and can be legally enforced, because parties must be made to understand that what you have agreed is binding. Tomorrow you may not get away from this settlement agreement. They did not suffer any impairment. You know, we have experienced sometimes some of the very few settlement agreements, when they go back to court, certain people say, I did not even understand what was being signed by me. Exceptional, but parties do say so. So to avoid that situation, because your name is also there as a mediator, we should give them sufficient time, and we should have one important aspect with regard to the settlement agreement, that is informed consent of the parties. They were fully informed what they were signing, what they were supposed to do, within how much of time. There was no scope to say tomorrow before anybody else or the court that mediator did not give us time to understand the terms of the settlement agreement. So we should give them sufficient time for understanding the terms, because these terms have got binding force. And then we should tell them to sign that half circle, that marathon session over and over again. In India, particularly, sometimes we are sitting for hours together on one particular day. Sometimes they are deferred to further dates, so that half circle is becoming full. It is an action of closure to all that transpired during those sessions of mediation. So signatures on the settlement agreement testify that parties understand. They recognize the fact that final agreement is the product of their participatory process. They have created this document for themselves, and now they are going to carry it back to their homes. They are confident about this part, that what they have done, they are satisfied with this, and this document is binding legal document on everybody whosoever has signed it. So that signatures are very important at the end. Names are given at the end. You must have seen even in contracts that way. Party A, or in case of resolution, authorized person, or we write even director in case of company, director of company A. We give their names and we get their signatures on the document. Once the signatures are put, the process is complete. And that completeness gives a lot of satisfaction, not only to the parties, but also to the mediator. Now, let me take up some examples with you. Why is it so important to be specific? If you were to give an orange to someone, how would you offer it? So this will give you how to write settlements. What all is important? This relates to terms. So this, just imagine that you are giving an orange to someone. Maybe it is a property, because when we talk about bigger problems in court, it can be a property also. But just imagine here is that how to be specific when you are giving an orange to someone. What will you say? I hereby give and convey to you all my rights, interests, claims, and title of the said orange, along with all its juice, pulp, seeds, and all the advantages attached thereto, with full power to bite, cut, freeze, and otherwise eat the same, or in any manner give the same away to any person with or without the pulp, juice, or seeds. I think this example gives you what all you have to write when you are transferring the property. So what terms should be written there? All rights, claims, titles, and interests are passed on to the person. So this is, I think this example clarifies what is important must be written there. Now, no right is kept with the person who is giving it away to another person. Let us take another example. But before, why we are saying so? It is important because everything which is written can be interpreted. And what can be interpreted can also be misinterpreted. And we lawyers are very crafty in creating many description of one written content. As we know, in law also, in our statutory legislations, may is read as shall is may as read as may. It's very important to be specific when you are writing mediated settlements. It is required because you are putting a closer to the conflict between the parties. The parties are resolving their conflict, not merely the dispute which is open in the court. So it's important to write it properly. Let us take another example. You all have heard about Birbal stories. This is a story where a man sold his well to a farmer. Next day, when a farmer went to draw water from the well, the man did not allow him to draw water from it. What did he say? He said, I have sold you the well, not the water. So you cannot draw water from the well. So what do you understand from this example? It is important, as I gave you an example of an orange, what is important is write about the sale of the well along with water lying in it. Of course, this story goes like this, that the person goes, then the farmer goes to Birbal and Akbar basically, and Akbar says, Birbal, resolve it, what to do about this? And the solution given by him was that you go there tomorrow and fetch water. And if he tells you that you cannot fetch water, at that point of time, you tell him, you sold me the well, not the water. So take away your water wherever you want to take. So that is another, from there, I have just picked up this example for you to understand. Basically, we have to write that not only the well, including in the water, well is the water, which has to be mentioned specifically in the settlement agreement. Like we generally talk property along with fixtures and furniture, or without fixtures and furniture, or without any certain things, limitations on the property. We'll take up another example also. Now, why being clear and unambiguous is important? Now, let us take this family dispute here. Let us read this. Terms of the settlement agreement included: the wife shall receive half of the husband's pension valued at rupees 70,000 upon his retirement. I will read it again for you. The wife shall receive half of the husband's pension valued at rupees 70,000 upon his retirement. Now see how it can be understood. Wife believed she was to receive rupees 70,000 and husband believed she was entitled to receive only rupees 35,000. Come back on the previous slide. Now read it. Wife shall receive half of the husband's pension valued at 70,000. So half of the pension valued at 70,000 or half of 70,000. So what you write is very, very important, because a small word can change the whole concept and can create ambiguity in the document, in the settlement agreement. So usage of the right words is very, very important when you are drafting the settlement agreement. Let us take another example. Mr. A agrees to sell his house to Mr. B for a total consideration of rupees 75 lakhs. Be careful the words we are using. A agrees to sell his house to B for a total consideration of rupees 75 lakhs. Now, when you are writing the settlement agreement and you just write A agrees to sell his house to B, does it mean that the property has been sold? It involves little legal complications. So for you people, it may take time, but I'm going to explain you that agreement to sell is not a document of sale in itself. For that, you need to execute a sale deed. So what is important is you mention what document is to be executed between the parties, because mere agreement to sell is not going to be sufficient. Now, another ambiguity can be caused by some overlapping, by some, you can say, hurried decision. And you just mention that a conveyance deed will be executed between the parties for a total sale consideration of rupees 75 lakhs. A sale deed is a part of a conveyance deed. Sale deed is a conveyance deed. But every conveyance deed is not sale deed. It can be gift deed, it can be mortgage deed, it can be any other deed, which lease deed, which can create right and interest in favor of B. So what is important is we specify that A agrees to execute a sale deed in favor of B, and with respect to property, give details of the properties and sale consideration amount as well. So all sale deeds may be conveyance deed, but all conveyance deeds may include one gift deeds, mortgage deed, exchange deed, lease deed, and many more such other deeds, because draftsmen know more than me even in this respect. So sale, now what should be mentioned in this document? We should mention the sale price, the consideration amount, date of transfer, obligations and responsibilities of the parties. Very important to be mentioned. What is to be done by whom? And suppose there is a property already in existence and you are selling it off, all the electricity bills, water bill should be cleared by person who is selling this property. No part of it, no part of any past responsibility shall fall on party B. It's important to be mentioned. And any restrictions on the property should also be mentioned. And generally we write that this property is free from all liens, encumbrance, mortgage, and it is free for sale, and he has all the right, authority, and duty. He has title to the property, and he has the right to transfer it to party B. He should assure the buyer absolutely clear title to the property. And the most important part is default clauses to be mentioned in this. Suppose in a recovery suit or even here, payment has to be made in a particular way. There are timelines given. And if the timelines are not followed, the agreement to sell collapses. And party is supposed to, and the defaulting party is supposed to go for and file a suit for specific performance. So you keep in mind while drafting such type of settlement agreements, which concern any properties or which concerns any transfer of any item, materialistic item from party A to party B, what if it is not complied with? So default clauses need to be mentioned. So party does not fulfill, then what shall happen? It must be mentioned. Even in cases where simple recoveries are there in terms of money, timelines are mentioned. And what if thereafter nobody pays? Like it generally happens in settlement agreements which take place under section 138 complaint cases. People agree and the whole payment schedule is redrafted, recrafted. But since people are not either very honest or they don't have the resources to pay, it can be any situation. What happens? The complaints are withdrawn and party is standing with hands open like this. What shall I do then? So deterrent clauses, default clauses must be kept in mind while drafting the settlement agreement. And also the legal implications must be kept in mind. What is law on that point of time? Is there any judgment which takes care of the settlement, any component of the settlement? Then I must try to understand that. See, this particularly group is of upcoming lawyers. There are debates on this, that whether a non-lawyer can be mediator or not. I'm not getting into detail on that. But if we as lawyers are drafting any settlement agreement, and more particularly a code annexed mediation matter, where settlement is going back to the court, a very important question will be put to your credibility, your ability to draft that settlement agreement. It will add to your name if you write good settlements. And if parties are struggling in court, even the judges may ask in the open court, which is full of about 50 lawyers and parties standing in the courtroom, who was the mediator? How this document has been drafted? So your credibility, despite your all efforts, it goes away. So it's very, very important to understand how to make the document legal. What all is to be written in that. We must keep that in mind. And how we can do that? If we are drafting the document, if we are revising the document before getting ceremonial signatures on the document by the parties. Like another example I will give you, that when settlement agreement is written in such a way that party A will pay 3 installments in the month of February, March, and April, and suit is withdrawn. And in case there is a default, where can the other person go now? If you go back to court, the suit has already been withdrawn. So what is important in such type of cases is to get it written, a decree is passed in terms of the present settlement agreement. You can execute the decree. You cannot reopen litigation sometimes because it has its own implications. Once you withdraw your suit, how can you revive it? People do say that he will be able to revive that suit. But if you read Code of Civil Procedures, there are limitations in certain cases and you cannot revive it. So what is important is that we must mention how the suit, how the proceedings will be dealt with while we talk about the closure of the litigation. And also on closure, we must write down step by step which proceeding will be withdrawn by whom and within how much of time. All those details are very important, and that is why I say that how, though it is important from the party's point of view, but how legally it is to be taken care of, that you can also decide. Like in our High Court, in matrimonial cases, FIRs are not quashed under 498A unless or until the parties are divorced. So even if one party is insisting, mention first about the filing of the quashing petition. Filing is not prohibited, but discretion is with the court. It has to be as per our practice in High Court, that quashing will be considered by the Honorable Court only once a decree of divorce is granted. So draft the settlement agreement in such a way where it takes care of the legal precedents as well, prevalent in law. So what is important is the difference between, this quote I got from Mark Twain quote, it gives us very important, you can say, insight while drafting settlement. The difference between the almost right word and the right word is really a large matter. It's the difference between the lightning bug and the lightning. So lightning bug is just an insect, whereas the lightning is, we see it can create havoc, it can be disastrous. So keeping in mind the difference between the right word and almost the right word, we should draft our settlement agreements for the parties very carefully. So the task you have as a mediator in your hand is very important part of a successful mediation. You can't ignore this. It's not that now let us close this. You wrap it up in a packet like you wrap a gift item for your friends, so that they go, while opening it also, they enjoy it. Of course, by saying that one should prepare a draft and then revise it, I do not mean to convey that one should delay it or defer it unnecessarily. Be on it, work on it, keep the parties involved in drafting those terms. They feel that it is their own document and they are supposed to work on it. And wherever the lawyers are working with them, parties have to involve their lawyers as well. And of course, the mediator has to embrace them, because legal interest of the parties are taken care of by the respective lawyers of the parties. So what I will say, that sometimes while drafting such settlement agreements, you may feel tired. Take a few minutes, refresh yourself. Don't mind drinking a coffee or munching a snack, because don't give into any constraint pressures by the parties, or you are tired, or you are feeling hungry, because there is no standardized document which will help you. Every document, every settlement has unique feature. There is no process of cut and paste, because if you just you tell the stenographer, take out that settlement, and you start filling the details, you are bound to do mistakes. Draft it afresh, draft it from the party's point of view, because one important aspect which is attached to the mediated settlement is that the burden of proof is very high to rescind an executed mediated settlement agreement before court. It's very difficult for the parties to step out of the settlement agreement and say, I did not know what has been written in the agreement. So at the end, I will say, put in your efforts even at the last stage, and when the parties put their signatures, acknowledge the efforts made by the parties. Congratulate them, because they have led to the resolution of their disputes, which belong to them. Solution came from them. You are just a facilitator. So congratulate them, wish them good luck. Bye-bye. So I wish you also good luck. I think by this I have reached on the time. Revti?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I conclude here. I thank you and I thank all the parties here, all the participants here.
Yeah, ma'am. Like, will you be ready to take some questions now?
Yes, 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 yes.
Should- Could you please check?
Revti ma'am, there's no questions yet. So I would request everyone who's attending, if they have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Anyone like to ask a question directly?
Participants are quite mesmerized, thinking how to write the agreement.
I think no, they are thinking about how to transfer the orange.
Ma'am, there is
a question.
there is one question. Yes. So ma'am, the question is, what was the answer for that husband and wife case, whether it was 35,000 or 70,000?
No, that's why I said drafting is very important. I showed by an example where it was written, it could be read both ways. So you have to be specific. 35,000, which is half of those 70,000. So he's getting pension of 70,000. He shall be paid, wife shall be paid 35,000. So there is no harm in writing small sentences. So don't try to be, I mean, we try to spell out what is in our mind, right? And it may be in my mind, I am clear while drafting this document that this is, it means 35. But the person who is reading can read it even 70,000 and 35. So why not break into two sentences and write specifically that only 35,000 will be paid to the wife?
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any more questions?
Ma'am, in a mediation, do the parties and the lawyers draft the mediation settlement agreement, or is it for the mediator to draft it? Just some clarification, some thoughts on it.
See, it is a practice developed by mediators themselves. Of course, mediator facilitates everything. Ultimately, the responsibility is whose? Parties, they draft. But you can create, you have to be involved throughout. You have to be involved throughout.
क्या कुछ मंगवा लूं? हाँ? बोलोगी?
Miss Nandini Mishra, can you please mute yourself?
Sometimes the basic draft is created by a mediator, so that the tenor is clear to the parties what is to be added and what is to be deleted. But it has to be crafted in such a way where parties themselves and their lawyers are involved because they trust them. So it all depends how do you are working in a group. How does that particular group want you to work? Of course, they will be satisfied only if their lawyers are there. But if you give this job to one particular lawyer, the whole thing may collapse. Your whole efforts may go waste at the end of the time when the settlement is to be created.
Ma'am, and a settlement agreement in a private mediation where there's only mediation, if it is just on a simple stamp paper, does it have enforceability on law under the Contract Act, or does every mediator act to move it into a conciliation act for enforceability? When
you're talking, your question is very clear from your perspective only. When you're talking about contract, in case of default, in terms of contract, you have to go back to court only and establish your right under the Contract Act. But if you are writing a conciliated agreement, it's an award under Section 74 of the Conciliation Act. So then you go only for execution of the settlement agreement or the conciliated agreement. But when you go for contract, you first have to establish the existence of the contract, and then again the lawyers are there to interpret terms of the contract. So that is merely a contract.
In a settlement agreement, can we write at the end that if there's any further dispute, parties agree to come to mediation before going to litigation? Would that be a right?
That is possible, because otherwise also these days many organizations are including mediation clause before even going for arbitration. Since arbitration is a private litigation, there is no harm in using that. See, voluntariness has still not been taken away. Look at the examples, particularly more from Commercial Courts Act. You have to mandatorily go for mediation, but nobody is binding you to settle there. It is the voluntariness has not been taken away. So by executing such clause, you do not take away the voluntariness of the process of mediation. The only thing is you are giving an opportunity to the parties. Try mediation, because when you talk, the possibility is to resolve disputes. If you are not in a position to resolve, you can always go back to court.
Yes, good evening, madam. Good evening, madam.
Raviji, you are speaking? Yes, please.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. Yes, madam. Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
See, madam, after signature by both the parties in an agreement, one party after signature is not interested again. Can you go for a court against, madam? Again?
Can you repeat your question, please?
Madam, after signature by both the parties in an agreement,
yes,
one party after signature is not interested by the next day. Can he go for the court again?
That is why I at the end I said that rescinding a document, rescinding a settlement agreement is a very difficult thing for a party, because if you have followed the process completely, you have given sufficient time to the parties, and with their informed consent, they have put their signatures, chances are very bleak that they will tomorrow get back and they will say, I want to walk out of the settlement, or I did not sign it, or I did not sign it with the intention to agree to this thing. So it's very important how the process has been followed. And of course, it ultimately depends upon the courts. How do courts take it? But generally, courts are encouraging mediation, and they do not get into such things unless or until there is something called mistrust in the mediator, or some fraud, or some lack of information, lack of consent while signing the settlement. That is why I was told by Push to talk about settlement agreements more, because we should ensure that when the parties go back to court, particularly in court annexed mediation, they should not back out what they signed. So this helps them. This gives credibility to the settlement agreement.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Rinaji, there is a ruling in Kerala High Court rendered in the year 2017.
Yes.
In which it says that where one party wants to withdraw from the settlement agreement in mediation,
yes,
the court has power under Article 23 Rule 3 to decide whether the agreement is effected lawfully or not. If it is proved to the satisfaction of the court that the dispute has been duly settled wholly or in part by a compromise, the court shall pass a decree in accordance with the settlement agreement.
So, Mr. Thankajan, you are basically agreeing with me what I am saying also.
Yes.
So courts are in this. Yes.
That is a ruling. I am mentioning the ruling.
Share it with me. Yes, please.
Yes. 2017 ruling. ILR.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yes. Thank you.
I have a question, ma'am. If I may.
Please, feel free.
Ma'am, does the presence of advocates of both the parties create an impediment upon the mediator to reach a conclusion?
I think I'll ask this question first to Push. Have they talked about the role of the lawyers in the process of mediation or not?
No, not
yet. It is still
yet.
pending.
It is pending.
See, out of my experience, I will just share that with you, that I am a lawyer first and then a mediator. I should know how to embrace my lawyer friends and take their participation in the process of mediation. Sometimes it may, at the end of your own experience also, you may feel that they acted as impediment. But in most of the cases, if you involve them from the beginning, encourage the parties to have their advisors with them, because what is hampering settlement is maybe their livelihood is being taken away. Like when the mediation movement started, why people were against this? Because they thought their livelihood will be threatened. But it's not so. Your name gets credibility in the market. And once you get resolved those matters as a lawyer, of course, you have to wear a different hat altogether. Your advocacy has to be different, but your name travels. That nowadays, most of the courts all over India have got multi-door courtrooms. Either one side is litigation, one side is arbitration, another side is mediation. So a lawyer has to see whether that particular case is fit for mediation, litigation, or for mediation, or for Lok Adalat. So if he gets the results to his clients, then and there only he gets justice to his clients. I don't think lawyers should be perceived as impediment. We should know how to involve them. But exceptions are there. So it's not a rule. Always exceptions are there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, there's one more question. The question is whether a Singapore arbitrator's interim ruling will be valid in India.
This has nothing to do with mediation. Let us take it in another way at a later stage.
Okay, ma'am.
Or the person can speak with me directly.
All right, ma'am. If there are no more questions, I request Revati ma'am to take over, please.
Madam, mediation agreement is a legally bound, madam?
See, again, a multi-million-dollar question. Mediated agreement gets finality in court annex mediation when it is, you can say, turned into a decree or an order under Order 23 Rule 3 of the CPC. A mere mediated agreement is just a contract. There are rulings to that also. But if you really want to do mediation, interchangeably words can be used, that is conciliation, which is governed by Part 3 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. If there is a conciliated agreement, then Rule 74 makes it basically an award, a deemed award. And once it is an award under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, it's a decree in itself. In the absence of these two processes, a mere mediated agreement, I think this question can be answered only when legislation comes on this. I can't answer this. This is merely a contract, according to me, between the parties.
So when a
Okay,
private
thank you,
mediation,
ma'am.
ma'am, when a private mediation takes place and there's a mediation agreement, what is the process of then invoking conciliation under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act? Is it giving notice as per the required notice?
You have to go through and follow the process described under Part 3 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act for making some settlement or conciliation award. The process is specified there.
So the mediation, yeah. So the mediation settlement agreement can be adopted in that.
I won't use the word adopted. It is better you start as a conciliation process. You go through those rules, things will be very clear. Maybe students may get confused between all these things, but you are a trained mediator, so you are putting this question. I understand your anxiety, but for that you have to start, the process has to start from the beginning, under the Act.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I've always learned from you. I look up to you as when you know that. You know that.
It's a sharing process, Aminji, you know it. We have also learned from here.
Are there any more questions?
Any other questions? Anybody? Shruti, there's any other question?
No, ma'am, I don't think so. Please take over. Thank you so much.
Okay. Ma'am, it was a very great session, and it was, in fact, I learned a lot personally on mediation agreement, because at times I had found difficulties in agreements, because parties themselves, along with the councils, they come with settlement agreement, and sometimes we need to vet on it and see whether clauses are correct and all this. But it was nice to understand the 5 C's which you have told me, and many times even in my training I've heard about this 5 C's, but it doesn't stay in my mind. And now I am also a student and adult learner.
Oh, so nice.
Along with them, and it was wonderful, ma'am. And also the importance of the signature in the mediated agreement, the draft agreement, mediation agreement, which is very, very important, because if there are 2 or 3 several drafts which you make, and then when you come to the finality, that agreement goes to the court for for decree. So we have to be very careful in the draft, which you really pointed out so well. Moreover, we have to be very specific and exact words which has to be used in writing this agreement. It was a very wonderful learning, ma'am. And I thank you so much for that. And ma'am, being an organizer for Samadhan for so many years, and you being busy having your webinars and training programs and conducting online mediations during the pandemic times, as well as now it has become hybrid both online as well as offline. I'm very thankful and grateful that you have agreed and accepted to come and impart knowledge to all of us on this.
Repti, I'm rather
Yeah.
thankful to all of you. You gave me a chance to interact with students. As I say, I learn a lot when I prepare for these people also, and then these questions also make me wise in many respects. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Veena ma'am. Seriously, it was a complete, wholesome, ceremonial, rhythmic, stitched piece of mediation agreement by you. Beautifully stitched. It's a wholesome food, and I think you've dispelled all the darkness through a beautiful lightning bug in their jar of knowledge through this piece. Thank you so much, Veena ma'am. We have
My
learned
pleasure.
so
My
much.
pleasure. My
Thank you
pleasure.
so
My
much.
pleasure.
Thank you, Veena ji. It's been a wonderful session. I could not join in the beginning because I had gone to, I was outside. So I couldn't join the beginning. Anyway, it was a wonderful session, ma'am. Very nice to.
This program, I know it's your baby, and Pushp is nurturing along with you. Rather, a great job is being done by both of you. I took only Pushp name in the beginning because you were not there, but I want to acknowledge on this platform that a great job is being done by you both and the whole of BMW team, and your creativity. It is amazing creativity. It is helping all of us further to take it forward.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's all because of your blessings, your support. We are able to do this for students. They are really, we are humbled with your presence, and we are really blessed to have you all as our teachers for our life. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you,
thank you,
Pushp ji.
students. Thank you, Amin sir. Thank you, Repti ji and Stuti. Thank you so much. Thank you, Repti.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
Pushpa ji.
Thanga Bachchan. Thank you, Mr. Thanga
Thank you,
Bachchan.
sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Veena
sir.
ji.
Thank you, Amir sir. And Pushpa ji, you can sign out today because you are the host
Acha,
now.
I am the host today. Okay, I'll sign off. So thank you once again. Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
happy Valentine to everyone. Valentine is not just between girlfriend, boyfriend, or husband, wife. The Valentine is for everyone. Our love and blessings for our students, and happy Valentine to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Same
you.
to you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, madam.